Try this now approach. Nice. Presidents of the clear next step. Sinikka helps others achieve better results. And that's kind of what we are in for. This is a session with strategic, and I believe it's leadership on this one. Leadership and strategic regarding PDUs, and of course, at this point, you should be aware how to go and capture that code in the event binder within the app. So without further ado, Ms. Waugh.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Well, thank you. So some of you had the opportunity, we got to connect this morning at this morning session on navigating, or at making the most of your generational differences at work. So if you were there this morning and you came back for a second session with me, thank you. I would never take that for granted, and I take it very, very gratefully. If you have, some of us dined on pasta at lunch, let's just find out who actually ate the pasta at lunch so I know where my snoozers are going to be. All right. So we'll keep an eye on you. If you are sitting next to someone who just raised their hand, make sure that you nudge them, elbow them from time to time. So I am so delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you to each of you for investing in your own development. If you're just coming in, I'll make this announcement one last time. You do need a handout, or there is a handout that goes with the session. So you're welcome to grab that off the back table. There's some swag back there if there's any left. So do grab one of those and be able to follow along. The handouts are also available for download on the app, so you have access to those. But some of us like the old school paper stuff. So we're talking about moving projects at the speed of change. And this is a really interesting topic to me. I am fascinated by change management and transition management and what that means for us as project leaders. I have a career in project management and business analysis. I currently run a training company. I've got a background that includes all kinds of things, including a master's degree in 19th and century French and British poetry. So if you are encountering in your life a college student who's trying to decide, can I be an English major and still succeed at life? I can think of at least one example that the answer is yes. So yes, this is moving projects at the speed of change is super fascinating to me because there's been a lot of change. I shared a little bit this morning that I was raised in the Navy. My dad was a Navy man. So we moved every 9 to 18 months of my life. Every 9 to 18 months of my life till my high school or middle school years, every 9 to 18 months we would pack up everything we owned, put it in boxes, and move. And the Department of Defense guys would come and pick it up from our house, and then we would unpack. And we lived when we would arrive in the new place, we would unpack, and sometimes the people around us looked and talked like us, and sometimes they ate food like we eat, and sometimes they didn't. I've lived all over the world and have just enjoyed that journey, and I'm super grateful for it. And then some number of years ago, I found myself in Iowa, and I chose Iowa, not for the weather, let's just be clear. So Colorado has the market, like you corner the market on the best weather in Earth, like on the entire planet, and some really, really wonderful people. But I chose Iowa a few years ago. But every time I have a chance to come back to the Rocky Mountains, come back to the Front Range and enjoy the view and the air and the wonderful, wonderful people, I'm so grateful for that. So as we talk about moving projects at the speed of change, think about the projects that you lead. Think about the work that you're doing. How many of us are in a project or leading a project that's going to change something for somebody? Right? Every hand in the room goes up. Okay, how about the flip side? What about if you're leading a project and oh no, there's change on the project? Anybody on a project where there's change on the project? Okay, so it turns out change is everywhere. Change is everywhere. It's happening all the time. What we have to do is we have to get better at it. We have to get better at interacting with change. We have to get better at bringing other people through change. So moving projects at the speed of change is this opportunity to go, well, what is it really? Why is it so awful? And what do we do about it? How do we bring others through change? So as we move forward in this, one of the stories that has recently happened to me, it was just a couple of years ago. I was doing a strategic planning facilitation with a group of human resources leaders from a financial services company in the Midwest. And about 18 of us or so around the table doing this strategic planning exercise, right? Strategic planning, senior leaders. What this tells me, like, in mind, these people are supposed to be fairly adept at change, right? We've been doing this for some time, and the act of strategic planning is often deciding in advance what changes are going to happen in the organization or what things we need to protect from change in the organization to help us achieve our goals. So 18 people around the table, and one of the gals starts talking, and she says, oh, you guys, I just recently attended a SHRM conference, and one of the speakers at the SHRM conference said this quote, said, change has never come at us this fast, and It will never be this slow again. Around the table, 18 people had a collective sense of, ugh. Like you could hear the in the room. You could watch the shoulders sag. You could see people sort of lean back, pens dropped to the table. Someone goes, that makes me tired just thinking about it. Right? There was this audible whisper. 18 people around the table who are supposed to be good at this stuff. And that first response was, ugh. And then about a heartbeat later, really not much more than that, about a heartbeat later, there was this shuffling in place and this tapping of papers and shuffling of chairs and scooching and kind of leaning in. And there was a collective sense of, all right, let's do this. I think this is really telling. A study came out pretty recently that said 80% of us here in North America, our first response to change is usually negative. 80%, our first response, and I was in a room of 18 senior leaders who should know better, and the first response was negative. It wasn't hostility, it wasn't anger, it wasn't frustration, but it was negative. It was not, hey, let's do this, right? First response was negative. If 80% of us, our first response to change is negative, what we need to do is we need to allow for that, and we need to get us quickly to the next thought, right? If our first response is negative, that doesn't mean it's our only response. It doesn't mean it's our forever response. And we got to move quickly to that next response. So I want you to recognize some characteristics of change and transition and get some tactics to recognize it among your peers and among those you are leading. I want you to encounter some keys to successful change and transition management, because at the end of the day, I want you to be more equipped, you to be better able to help the person next to you through change. As we go through this, one of the things we have to think about, and I was reminded on the airline yesterday, you know how if you've flown any time in the last 25 years, somewhere before the flight leaves the ground, someone very helpful says something like, in the case of a loss of cabin pressure, oxygen masks will fall from the ceiling. Take the mask and secure it, put the strap around you, secure the mask to your face, and oxygen will probably flow even though the mask or the bag doesn't inflate fully, oxygen will be flowing. And then they say something really interesting. Secure your own mask before helping someone else with you. Now, wait a second. That doesn't feel very altruistic, right? Aren't we supposed to help our neighbors? Aren't we supposed to serve? Aren't we supposed to love others more than ourselves? For sure. But if you pass out from lack of oxygen, you cannot be useful to the person next to you. And I think they know this. And I use the same analogy in change management. Secure your own mask before helping those next to you. So this first question here, you're thinking about what brought you to this session. What's changing? What do you want to change in your projects? This is a quick warm up the room. This is a workshop, right? So you came here knowing that I was not going to let you sit in that seat and snooze after lunch. It's a workshop. We're going to work. We're going to roll up our sleeves. We're going to get some stuff done. And this first practice is to form groups. So collectively kind of turn your bodies around in your chairs. A group of 1 is too small. A group of 5 is about too big. So somewhere 2, 3, or 4, gather around, take a look at each other, and talk about some of the big changes going on where you work. Go. You got about 30 more seconds. Oh. Ten more seconds. Okay, I'll bring us back together. As I bring us back together, oh, I see how you are. Okay, I'll bring us back together. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap once if you can hear me. Clap once if you can hear me. Thank you. Smile and wave if you can hear me. That's so much better than clapping. All right, so bringing us back together. You put a bunch of project managers in a room together and ask them to agree with each other vehemently for 4 to 5 minutes, and everybody's happy. So this is a wonderful thing. Thank you for this discussion. I'm looking for a couple of quick ideas. Who's got a significant change? What kind of change is going on that you're leading in your projects? Just looking for an example or two. Oh, I see a person over there. Go ahead. Changing the HR payroll system, which will touch everybody. Thank you. This is a prize for you. Can you help pass that along? Thank you so much. All right, somebody else? Yes, ma'am.
Big changes in our executive team and the culture's going to shift.
Ooh, so we got a system change, and she says she's got big changes in the executive team, so the culture is going to shift. So change, my friends, is afoot. You probably have changes to systems. You've got change to teams, change to business process, change to tools, change to, there's merger and acquisition activity. There's all kinds of cool stuff going on. So when you think about those, I want to know for you personally, what are the first 3 words? If you have a handout, this is a spot to write them down on the handout. The first 3 words that come to mind when you hear the word change. When you personally jot them down, first 3 words that come to mind. Jot them down. First 3 words that come to mind for you personally when you hear the word change. Everybody jot down your 3 words. There were pens at the back. There were handouts at the back. If you don't have a pen, try and remember them. Oh, type them into your phone. But that's the orthodox use of phones at this point. First 3 words. First 3 words that come to mind when you hear the word change. We definitely still have folks in the room who are thinking about the salmon. It was really yummy. But now we're talking about change. So first 3 words that come to mind when you hear the word change. I want you to stop for just a second and think about someone who works on one of your projects with you. Think about someone who works on one of your projects with you. And think about their first words when they hear of the word change. What do you think they've heard and what they've done? Jot that down as well. Jot that down as well. So not just your first words, but the first words that when you picture someone on your project, someone you work with on a pretty regular basis, you know them pretty well, get them in mind, and you jot that down. First 3 words they think of, or that you've heard them say. All right, and here's the last one. Now I want everybody in the room to picture someone about whom you have strong, positive feelings. Dare I say love? Strong, positive feelings you have for this person. So it could be someone in your life. They don't have to be at work. They can be a spouse, a significant other, a child, a parent, a sibling. Strong, positive feelings. I will know you are picturing this person because there will be like a smile on your face because you have positive feelings for them, right? Get these strong, positive feelings about someone you know, and you have strong positive feelings for. Now, when I say change, what are the first 3 words they say? What are the first 3 words they say? All right, we're going to group our words up here. We're going to try and get our words into 3 categories. Category 1 are those words that could be described with a happy face. Words like, somebody give me a happy face word. Opportunity, growth, adventure, exciting, fun, yay, right? These are happy face words. Look at your list of words. Raise your hand if you have at least 1 happy face word written down. All right? All right. So then there's another kind of word up there. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, and those are the grouchy face words. Those are the words that face up there, that grouchy face at the far end, reflects how we feel about change. Give me some examples of grouchy face words. Fear, no, ugh, whine, stress, eek, again, crap, right? Why again, right? Okay, so raise your hand if at least one of the words that you wrote down from any of your audiences was a grouchy face word. All right, so at least one. And then we've got some neutral words. Some neutral words that aren't really grouchy or happy face. They just are. Give me an example of a neutral word. When. Okay. Why? Let's go ahead. Accommodate. Impact. Uncertain. So uncertain is an interesting one. Sometimes some people are like, hey, I like the gray. Let's see if we can surf that. And then some people are like, ooh, uncertain. Nah, not for me. But yeah, a neutral word could be, it carries no emotion with it, or it could go either way, right? Kind of depending on the moment. Here's one of the things that I need you to be aware of. It's possible that the first word was more negative than the others. Statistically, that's what they say. They say our first response is negative. So statistically, it's possible that your first word was more negative than the others. The other piece, though, that we got to talk about here is that your words or their words about change is not a value judgment. Someone's appetite for change, and I use the word appetite, not tolerance, but appetite. A person's appetite for change is not a reason to value or devalue said person. A person's appetite for change is as fluctuating as a person's appetite for pizza. Sometimes you're in the mood for pizza. Sometimes you find yourselves in downtown New York with less than $1 on you, and all you can afford is that 99-cent slice of pizza, right? Sometimes pizza is your appetite. Sometimes you've been hanging out with your friends and pizza is just what you want. Sometimes, though, pizza is not what we're in the mood for, right? And we don't judge people for how much they like or don't like pizza, or their appetite for pizza at any given moment. My appetite for pizza with my children at a place called Chuck E. Cheese is slightly different than my appetite for pizza when my brother said yesterday about the new place from Chicago that just opened downtown in Denver, right? What, Giordano's. My appetite different, right? Chuck E. Cheese, Giordano's. Different appetite. When we think about change, we got to use the word appetite as well. Judging someone for their appetite for change is as ridiculous as judging someone for what color shirt they chose to wear today. It's unacceptable. We have to dismiss the value judgment. Really, part of how we do that is we start talking about what things are. And we start taking them apart. And change, quite simply, is when thing A ends and thing B begins. So I told you I moved a lot growing up. At some point, I lived in Colorado, and then poof, I lived in Iowa. Right? Poof, just like that. Thing A ends. I can't live in Colorado and live in Iowa. I can, in fact, maintain dual residency. I can, in fact, have 2 homes if I chose to. That can be, cost prohibitive in most cases. But I can't live in both places simultaneously. I can't have System A and System B simultaneously. I can't have Leadership Team A and Leadership Team B simultaneously, right? Thing A has to end, and then Thing B begins. So think about any of your personal experiences. What is change, right? Change is just that little poof, it's that little tiny triangle. I was a student, and then poof, I was a graduate. I was unemployed, and then poof, I was an employee. I was an employee, and then poof, I was a business owner. Poof, right? I was not a project manager, and then poof, I was a project manager. I was not a PMP, and then poof, I was a PMP. I was single, and then poof, I was married. I was not a mom, and then poof, I was a mom, right? You get the idea. It's this little tiny state. It's a status change. That's not really what it feels like, is it? It doesn't feel like that little tiny poof. In fact, for most of us, it feels more like this. It's this giant barricade of, oh my gosh, are you kidding me with this? Right? What if? What if it's not as great as this thing that I'm leaving behind? What if it's not everything that what if these new leaders are not like the old leaders? What if this system is harder to use than the old system? What if I don't know which way west is without the front range to tell me? It happens. What if, right? We have this block that for many of us, when we hear about change, the thing that goes on in our gut actually causes us to not be able to even enjoy the thing that we're in anymore. It causes us to start, the joy of that moment starts to degrade, and we start to sort of panic and turn the things that are coming for the future. And then at some point into the new that we're stable. Think about any time you moved. How many months was it before you actually hung pictures up on the wall? For some of us, it's the next day. For some of us, it's 6 or 8 or 9 or 10 months later before we hang the first picture, because it doesn't feel like home yet. So I work with a very, very young team where we've been in business for about 11 years, and my team is very young, and they keep telling me I've got to stop showing this clip, but it always gets allowed, so I'm going to keep showing it. So part of why they say I can't show this is because they have never been in the presence of a monitor that looked like that. Yeah. So some of us have, right? We've been in the presence of those monitors that took up lots of space. So this is a picture about transition, right? Change and transition are hard. This woman had been in the workforce. She was a transcriptionist, and she used to, take data, do data entry based on the things that you can see that she's looking at, and do data entry. She went home, raised her kids, at least got them into school, got the third one into kindergarten. So she's coming back to work, right? She's coming back. This is her first day at work. Watch close. And that's the moment where someone goes, no, really, I don't get it. My team says I don't get it. Can we watch that one more time? Right? If you didn't get that one, right, what's she doing? It's a carriage return, right? She used to use a typewriter, and it was a carriage return. If you hear someone use the word carriage return or hard enter, it's because they're still recovering from those days when we had typewriters, and sometimes you had to use a little force to get that thing to go. So this poor gal is worth a laugh, right? It's a funny little scene, but here's the sad part, and here's where I beg you as project leaders to do better. I beg us to do better. The sad moment is the very next thing that happened was someone came in her office or her space and scolded her for being unwilling to change. This woman did not come to work today to destroy tech. She did not come to work today to be destructive and throw things on the ground, right? She did not do this intentionally, but you can bet that a reputation was formed. And someone said, if you make this woman try and change, she's so stuck in her ways that she just throws things around. Oh, my friends, we can do better. We can do so much better. And this session is designed to help us do just that, to do better. So change is that little moment, right? It's that thing, that when thing A ends and thing B begins. But for many of us, it's actually a process. And I need to show you this process. This process is a transitional process. Whether you follow ADKAR and ProSci, or whether you do Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's method of change, or whether you're looking at Cotter, or any of William Bridges, any of the leaders, we're going to follow a very, very similar process. So let me show you the crash course, the process of what change is. In fact, in order to change, in order for transition to complete itself, change is that little moment, but transition is where we go through the process of letting go of A. And then there's this unstable period in the middle, and then and only then can we take hold of B. Think about when you learn to ride a bike, right? Learning to ride a bike, that unstable period in the middle where they took the training wheels off and you're kind of wobbly, and they're like, riding a bike is going to be fun, and you're like, this doesn't feel fun yet. Right? Nobody really likes the unstable period, even those of us who would self-identify as I love change. Even those who would say that, my friends, what we find is they even don't like the unstable period, the gray, the uncertainty, the where it's not clear, where I'm not really sure which way I'm going and the footing doesn't feel very solid. So even those who love change, well, we may love the new, we may love where we're going, there's a process and there's a part of this that is very human and that creates reaction that we have to respond to. And one of the things I got to tell you about, quite honestly, is a phenomenon that I was not aware of some time ago, and it is the phenomenon of pre-grievers and post-grievers. Now, have you heard this concept? I didn't know such a thing existed. But a pre-griever is someone who grieves in anticipation of a sad thing happening. So if you are a parent of a high school senior, for example, a pre-griever is spending most of the high school senior year weeping and moving about the house in a bit of sadness, thinking about all of the lasts and all of the finals that are going to happen. You know, this is our last time, and then baby's going off to college or whatever it is. If you are a post-griever, the same experience can be going Okay, thank you. We'll try this one on. Okay, this one has officially, this is deceased. So, where was I? Oh, so post-griever, an individual who could be going through the same thing and they know their kid's going off to college, but it isn't until they've actually dropped the child off at college that on the drive home they can barely make it home because they're weeping the loss of said child, right? That's the idea, the difference between pre-griever and post-griever. So I'll tell you a quick story. So, oops, back up here. Thank you for your flexibility and patience here. So, pre-griever, post-griever. I encountered it on a very personal story. So, I've got two daughters. They are 15 and 13 now. And a few years ago, my younger daughter, well, we were all, as a family, we were going to Disney World. So, this was several years ago. The kids were like 10 and 8, so fairly young. And we were going to Disney World. And the 8-year-old, maybe they were younger, 9 and 7, I don't know, somewhere right around there. And we're on our way to Disney World as a family, right? Disney World, this is supposed to be a good thing, yes? Take your family to Disney World, the most magical place on earth. So here we are. We live in Indianola, Iowa. It's about a 20-minute drive to the Des Moines airport. We're in the car, get everybody loaded, get out of the garage and in the driveway. And we've not left our driveway yet. And we're still got to get to the airport and fly and all this. So we're in the driveway, and I turn because I hear a strange sound. And my younger daughter is literally weeping. Thank you so much. Thank you. She is literally weeping. She's got tears coming out of her eyes, and she's sobbing. Sophie, sweetie, what is going on? Did you forget something? We could go back in and get it. It's no big deal. And she says, no, it's not that. Sophie, we're going to Disney World. Aren't you excited? She goes, uh-huh. Sophie, what's going on? She says, in a few days, our vacation's going to be over. Are you kidding me, kid? Are you going to be like this the whole way? So mostly the whole way there, she was like that. Unfortunately, her sister was like that most of the whole way home, right? Because we got a pre-griever and we got a post-griever. So here's a secret, in case you did not know this in your project leadership. If you are leading a project that is causing, say, change for anybody, your duration of transition management will begin with the earliest pre-griever, and it will not end until the end of the latest post-griever. If you were not prepared for said things, this can come as a surprise. The duration of that can really, really throw you for a loop. So we've got a process here. The process is a standardized process. I've tried to create a model that's really, really accessible and really easy for us to follow. And it's a model about transition, model about change, and it's based on all the experts, but I like really tidy blue boxes. So I've created these tidy blue boxes, and I'm actually going to invite us to play along. So this is a workshop, right? And it's after lunch, and we all have to fully acknowledge that there's a temptation of an hour and a half sitting together in a quiet room. We could doze off, and we don't really want to do that. So I'm actually going to invite you to stand up. We're not going to do calisthenics, but we're going to experience the transition process together. So what I'm going to invite you to do is just stay in your row. Stay in your row, but we're going to move in the rows. We're going to go out on a limb. We're going to try it, and if you don't like it, I'm sorry, but we're going to try it anyway. So everybody stand up and push as far down to this end as you can. You don't need anything with you. Just leave your stuff on your chair or under your chair or whatever. And stay in your row and just keep sliding and go as far down this way as you can. We won't be standing long, but it'll get you out of your seat, get you stretching your legs. All right. So we'll do the best we can to get as far this way as we can, and we're going to experience this together. So what I'm going to invite you to do in this moment is be careful. Don't anybody trip. Be cautious. Be safe as best we can. So we're going to experiencing these 5 stages. So how many stages are there? 5 stages. So we're going to experience them, and you're going to let your whole body kind of experience this. So here is the first stage of transition management. Oh, you okay? There you go. Okay, first stage in transition management is the stage in which we are stable in A. So at this first stage, this is kind of everybody, this is way at this end of the spectrum. Stable in A is where you look as confident and as engaged and as comfortable as you can. You put your hands on your hip, you are rock solid, you're a rock star. Turn to your neighbor and say, I am a rock star. Right? I love this space. Turn to your neighbor and say, I love this space. Right? This is it. Here's the truth. The secret little truth about that is even if you don't love it, even if the system you're working with is so annoying because you know when you hit that one button, you have enough time to go get a cup of coffee before you can get to your next screen, even when that's the case, you know it and you are stable in it because you know exactly how many steps it takes you to get that cup of coffee. So even if you don't love it, you're stable. I'm stable. So turn to your neighbor and say, I'm stable. All right. So now we're going to move this way a little bit. Now we're going to move this way collectively. We're moving to stage 2. How many stages are there? 5. All right, we're moving to stage 2. Stage 2 is letting go. Letting go. So we'll kind of, don't go too far. We'll just kind of, because we got 3 more that we got to do. So stage 2, we'll kind of be as close to this door as we can. Stage 2 is letting go. letting go. This is the grief, my friends. This is when someone says, you know that thing that you've always loved? You know that view of Pikes Peak that you're used to every morning? You don't get that anymore. Like, you know the control that you had over the remote before there was another human living in your space? You don't get that anymore. You know that comfort level you had with that team and that project and the way you could get approvals? You don't get that anymore. Show me your grief, right? This is active negative. Some of us go sad. So if you go sad, you could show us your sad face. Some of us go angry. That's scary. So like you've got neighbors standing next to you. Don't go too angry, right? This is active negative. This is what they're talking about. For 20 years in the HR space, we talked about all change is like a death. This was from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It was sort of unfortunate because for 20 years, we said all change is like a death. So nobody likes to talk about change because nobody likes to talk about death. But this is it. This is where the grieving happens. This is where I have to let go. This is where I have to let go. Turn to your neighbor and say, this is where I let go, and this hurts. Right? Fear, anger, sadness, these are those feelings of loss. Nobody really likes that. All right, let's move a little. We're headed towards the middle. Get as close to the middle of the room as you can. Close to the middle of the room as you can. Got a lot of room. All right, and as you get towards the middle, I am so humbly grateful for how well you're playing along. Thank you. I owe you one. All right, so here we are in the middle of the room. And this is the unstable period. This is where the ground beneath our feet does not feel solid. This is where it feels unpleasant, it feels unstable, it feels uncomfortable, it's wobbly, it's muddy, it could be the bottom of a valley for all we know, right? So show me your I'm dealing with uncertainty face, right? We got actually chairs shaking, we got trembling. This is mucky, is what it is. This is mucky, this is muddy, this is gross. Turn to your neighbor and say, this is gross. And this is what we go through. This is where, right? So picture this. You've moved. As an organization, your company decided to move. You've relocated to another office. Happens all the time. You are 2.5 weeks into the transition. Okay, 2.5 months into the transition. And it is, it's a Wednesday. And all of a sudden, you look out your windshield with a new level of clarity and realize that you are still 2/3 of the way on your way to the old route. You're not on your way to your new office. Like, because you just go through the groove. It's unstable. It doesn't feel familiar yet. You forgot to think about it. I mean, you still have to think about it to make it happen. So this is gross. All right, so we move 2 more. Next one is stage 4. We're going over to stage 4. How many 4 stages? 5. There are 5. There's one more after this one. So stage 4, as you get here, what we got to think about, stage 4, this is heavy lifting. This is climbing. This is the new skill learning. This is working on stuff. How many of us, if we ever stop to think about it, when they tell us to change, they say, try that new system. They say, try that new office. Try that new, you can do it, right? Just try that new thing. Try that new way. This is in addition to our day jobs. They're not saying do this change and stop doing all the other 70 things that you were working on today. Do all the 70 other things and then master this new skill while you're doing it. Right? That's what it's in addition to our day jobs. I was doing a training just 2 weeks ago with a group that is going through such major change saturation. They've got a new CEO, they've got a new senior leadership team, they've got new stuff and new tools and new processes. And then there's this HR gal who comes in front of them and says, you guys, new process now. When you reply to the staffing requisitions, you have to hit reply all. The group melted. They couldn't handle it. Reply all instead of reply was more change than they could take. Because that was the straw, right, that broke the camel's back. Like, oh my gosh, this is hard. So turn to your neighbor and say, oh my gosh, this is hard. This is the climbing, any kind of whole body kind of climbing, working up a sweat kind of experience. That's what you're doing here. And then, so let's get as far as we can over to this far side. As far as we can over to the far side, just watch for the projector there. As far as we can over to the far side. And as you get there, you can start smiling. As you get there, you can start smiling because we're like, woohoo! Woohoo! Everybody show me woohoo! We made it, right? We made it. This is it. We have arrived. We're stable and we're comfortable in the new. The new, the B feels like A used to. It's familiar. It's home. I love it. And do you know what they do next? They start all over, like they turn the page and this is like a sideways scrolling screen on a video game. This thing just keeps on going. You just level up. That's all. That's all you do. You just keep leveling up. But we're doing the same process over and over again. How many stages? 5 stages. You have now sort of experienced them. Whole body learning, I call this, right? Total physical response. You've now had some experience. Go back to your seats, and I'll see you when you get there. Give yourselves a round of applause for playing along.
Interesting observation as we were going through that. As we got to the end and we accepted B, there was still a whole tail of people that were still in the middle of it.
I'm going to share that. I'm a coach on that. What's your name?
Steve.
Steve. Thank you. Thank you. Prizeworthy, Steve. All right, so as you're taking your seats, Steve down front here has just made a really interesting observation. He says, as we were doing that, we got all the way to B, and all the way to B, stage 5, and some of us were celebrating. And Steve says, did you notice, though? As some of us were already celebrating, there was a whole bunch who hadn't made it there yet. Does that happen in your organizations? Like someone has moved on and celebrated. In fact, very often it's the idea thinker upper who has already moved on because in his mind or her mind, they have already arrived, and the rest of us are going, dude, I'm way back here. Like, I have not arrived where you are. And what we need to do is we need to bring people along. An excellent observation. So we think about the transition management. So for years, I would draw this as a series of boxes and lines and drawings. So I'm going to invite you to turn to the pace in your handbook, your handout, if you are so willing. That says, draw your change management process, right? Draw your change management process. It's got about a half page on there. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to draw something that looks a little bit like, so see how the cliff over on the side there is about halfway down the page? Draw a little cliff. You don't have to draw the whole cliff, just draw a little line. So here, I'll point to it with we got a pointer on here? Pointer work? Yeah. Did I have it? No. There we go. Pointer. There we go. All right. So draw a little line right here. Draw just that much of the line. Just draw that little line and put an A under it. Draw that little line right there. Put an A under it. And put a smiley face right above it. Yep, way over there. Draw a line and put an A and put a smiley face right above it. This is how you can draw this at home with your neighbors. So draw an A. And then go way over here and draw another line over here. It's higher, right? See that it's higher on the page because progress, right? It's higher. So draw a higher line over there, just a short little line. Put a B under it. Put the B in a dotted line instead of a circle line because it's future. We don't know what it looks like for sure. It's future. It's uncertain. So draw it in put a dotted line around your B instead of a solid line. So you got A over here is your short little line on one side and then B on the other side. All right? And then I want you to draw a cliff. Imagine that someone is pushing you off a cliff. Because those tiny little boxes aren't really what it feels like. It really feels like someone pushes us off a cliff. See that little dude hanging there and he's just hanging by his fingers? He's hanging on because it's active, negative stuff. He's grieving. So draw falling off a cliff. And then at the bottom of your valley, you've got a whole space of water and goo and slime and whatever you want to call it down there at the bottom. Doesn't work. The laser pointer doesn't work from quite that far away. So you get the bottom line. And then you start to draw a jagged line coming up the other side. So you're connecting A and B with a fall on the one side, an uncertain, unstable surface, and then kind of a jagged, cliffy thing headed up the other side. And as you draw that, you've got two happy faces. You got one happy in A and one happy over in B, and the other 3 stages are sad. The other 3 stages, right? We felt this as we walked across the room. We had a stage that was loss and grieving. There's a sad face. We got the stage, the uncertain, this is gross. The unpleasant uncertainty, that's an unhappy face. And then we've got the climbing, the working up a sweat in addition to our day jobs. That's an unhappy face too. So you got kind of a series of faces going on up there. So there's your first draft of that. We'll come back to that some more. This picture, by the way, this is, let me go back. Page up. One of these is page up. So this picture is an infographic. I used to draw it on a flip chart with like disembodied circle heads, and I had a graphic artist working for me. He's like, seriously, Sinikka, you have to stop drawing the disembodied heads. It's creepy. So I don't do that much anymore. But the picture he designed for us based on the stories and hearing me narrate this several times. It's available on our website. If you QR code us, there are these little things flying around the room. There are several of these. If you just scan that, you'll automatically get a copy of that. If you scan that, pass along. If you want a copy, put your email on one of the sign-in sheets that are coming around, or grab a business card, whatever you want, or go to our website, yourclearnextstep.com, and you can download this at any time. It's called the change infographic, but it's got some more messaging in it. But let's back up just a little bit, and let's talk about where change comes from. So where does change come from in our projects? You've experienced the transition, right? You got to secure your own mask, so now you know the journey. But where does it come from? Well, it comes from the task at hand, right? In the task at hand, there is project work. Now that we're here, right, now that we're doing this, oh, let's change that screen too. Oh, let's add that thing. Since we're here, since the hood's open. That's change at the task level. And then at the organizational level, we've chosen to be part of an organization, and the organization says, expand our market footprint, build a global headquarters, centralize shared services. Your organization has said such things. Roll out a new HR system, right? Organization says this. Now, I, as a human, have chosen to be part of this organization. I need to keep that in mind, because if I've made a choice to be part of this organization, then I have some control over whether I'm part of this change or not. If I can't take this change, I need to move organizations. But then there's the third kind, which are kind of in red because they're the scariest kind. The ones that happen and we have no control over it. You know, vinyl, 8-track, cassette, CD, MP3, streaming audio, what? Right? This is things that are outside our control, that we can't control these things. And the darker the red in that visual, the scarier it is. So think about the people that you're bringing along in change and what they're feeling. So you know about the standard project life cycle, right? So you know the standard project curve. Everybody knows this. You got initiation, you got planning, you got execution and monitoring and controlling. While the team is executing, first you initiate, then you plan. While the team is executing, the project manager monitors and controls. And when we're all done, we close. Right before we're done, we close. Standard curve, you'll see this in any of the textbooks about project management. That's the total project effort. But look at the project manager effort. Project manager effort is on a different scale, but look at it. It's a totally different shape. Totally different shape. And what happens is we as project leaders, we wind up running really quick to catch up with the person who had the brilliant idea for a change in the first place. And we do this planning, right? We herd the cats to get all the plan, this Herculean effort of planning. And then as we're executing, or as a team is executing and we're monitoring and controlling, change is that little bump that happens over there. First time I rolled out that scene, I had someone say, how come your picture only has one of those? Ours seem to have more. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. They have more. And the more they are and the more painful they are kind of depends on how you choose to manage change and transition. Did you hear that? How painful they are and how many of they are depends on how you choose to manage change and transition. How do you choose to bring people along, right? Even if you take PMIs, take the PMBOK and take Chapter 4 on integration management. Right there, 4.6, perform integrated change control. 4.6, right? It's in there. It's a thing we got to do. And here's what I know about integrated change control. That means, you know, the picture of juggling. The primary role of the project manager is to be the juggler, right? I'm juggling scope, I'm juggling time, I'm juggling cost and communication and stakeholder management and risk and quality and procurement and human resources. I'm juggling all of that, right? That's me. I'm juggling as a project manager. And then when change happens, that's when I really need those good juggling skills. Change happens. Whoa, they changed the scope. Okay, what's that going to do to my communications? Oh, they changed communications. Whoa, what's that going to do? Do I need to bring in additional human resources? Do I need more money? Or is this going to take more time to get through this? Right? That's what's happening right there. And when change happens, that's what we've got to look at. So when we think about 3 things you know about a project, right? Things you know about any project as a project leader. These are the essentials. You can follow the PMBOK if you like. You cannot follow the PMBOK, but if you're going to do it right, at any moment in a project, you need to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. Yes? If you don't know, think about a project you're working on right now. If you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, I beg you to put your pencil down and go find out, because we need to know what we're doing and why. And if we don't, then we run the risk of changing the wrong thing. So change becomes more painful and a little bit harder. And then we need to know how we're going to get it done, right? Our basic how. How much time, how much money, how many people, how we're going to manage the risk. The how is kind of our basic next thing. Well, if we don't know how we're going to get it done or how we're going to get from here to there, then we won't have what we need to get the change done. I was not equipped. I was not equipped for a weeping 8-year-old on the trip to Disney World. I was ill-equipped for that. If I had thought about it, if I'd known about pre-grieving, if I'd known that such thing exists or that my child was one, that I would have been better equipped. I would have been better prepared. Now I'm prepared for the next time. In a couple of months, we're going to visit our former German exchange student. We're going to go see her high school graduation in Germany, and I'm going to pack Kleenex because I know that my younger daughter will cry on the way there. And the older daughter will cry on the way home. So, but if we don't know this, if we're not planning ahead for change, we won't have the time that we need to get things done. And then risk management, the third piece you got to know for any successful project. What's standing in our way, and what are we going to do about it? Well, if we don't know that, we will make it better instead of worse. Right? Oh, how we, there's a new phone app that's coming out, this game that I haven't played, but it keeps popping up on my screen. And it's the one where you've got this house disaster. I don't even know what it's called, but some disaster is going on in your house. And you got to pick the right tool to solve the disaster, to solve the crisis at hand. And you lose if you pick the wrong thing and your house blows up. It's not a very uplifting game, I don't think. But it's really interesting for project managers. Like, do you have the right tools in your tool set to bring people along and to not burn the house down? So, when we think about progress and we think about project management, the art of progress, Alfred North Whitehead, the mathematician, the art of progress is to preserve order amid change and to preserve change amid order. There are some of us with a stronger appetite for order and some of us with a stronger appetite for change. The idea of progress, of moving forward, is that we got to keep doing it. The reality is that change cycle that we just went through, that transition of all 5 stages, we're going to keep hitting that over and over and over again. Bringing people along, watching people race ahead of us, we got to really help them in this. We need to plan ahead. We need to plan it more robustly. So within our tool set at your Clear Next Step, I didn't tell you what we are, by the way. We are a training company, but what we believe in, the whole reason that I exist, the whole reason that our company exists is to make communities better. At the end of the day, so here's the premise. Now, as you listen to the rest of this, you'll hear it through these ears. If we can make our human interactions with each other at work even better, if we can make change a little less painful, leadership a little more capable, communication a little more effective, projects a little easier, when we do that well, at the end of our work week, on Friday night, we work, maybe we've worked a 55 or 60-hour week instead of a 70-hour work week. And we drive home a little safer. And we tip the pizza guy a little more generously. And when we have our Saturdays, we volunteer and give back in our communities instead of holing up and dreading Monday. Right? That's why we exist. And so all of this, any tool that you can use out of this to make your interactions better with your team, I invite you to do that. We got to plan for change right there in the center of what we're doing. We got to plan a little more robustly. So quick exercise. It's time for us to break into small groups again. Quick exercise. A group of 1 is too small. A group of 5 is going to be too big, so 2, 3, or 4. In those groups, you've got a space on your handout to draw. So here's what I'm looking for, is I want the change process where in step 1, someone suggests a change. What should be the next step? You could draw them in boxes like a flow chart, or you could just make it a linear list. But that's the assignment. Someone suggests a change on your project. You're planning. You're not actually in change. You're not in execution yet. You're still in planning. So the moment of the day is we're in planning. We're planning ahead for what we will do, how we will behave when someone suggests a change. Now, that someone could suggest something, that someone could be the federal government and suggest something like, well, we don't do it that way anymore. It could be a developer saying we can't do that. That's not technically possible. It could be someone within the team saying, yeah, let's go this way instead of that way. Someone suggests a change. We don't know who or what change, but you're in planning ahead for your process. You have 1 minute, small groups, go. About 10 more seconds. Okay, I'll bring us back together. Give you at least a chance to think about that. How many of you have an existing change control process for your projects? You have an existing change control process for your projects. Hands up if you have one today. Have one already. All right. If you don't have one, I invite you to look at one of those people who raised their hand and see if we can get one. But here's a simple way of looking at it. So in step one, someone suggests a change, and then someone reviews or analyzes it. So usually first step, someone suggests it. Second step, there's some word like review, analyze, understand, investigate, consider, think about, right? We got a second step on that. And then we've got a simple decision in the middle, which is decide. Like approved, should we do it or shouldn't we? I believe that if someone suggests a change and we just wildly say yes, we can do that, but there are consequences to those actions, right? We should at least think about it. Likewise, if someone suggests a change and we just blanketly say, well, no, that wasn't in scope, that can be career limiting, so we don't do that. But we investigate it, we think about it. If we decide no, we document it, we write it down. If we decide yes, we communicate, right? And then we update the plan and we proceed with the new plan. So it seems innocuous enough. It's a simple, pretty straightforward. You've probably got something very similar. Who's got something pretty similar on your pages as you wrote things down? Right? It looks pretty consistent. This is not rocket science. This is not math. But here's what happens. Someone suggests a change, and you get this. Wait, I thought we were doing all of those function pieces. Or, oh, I thought we were going here instead of there. I thought the carpet was going to be green, not blue. Are you kidding me? Right? Someone suggests a change, and people start freaking out. And then those who aren't freaking out start yelling. And if they're not yelling, they're weeping and going despondent and checking out entirely. And so even the fact, so step back. How many of us have a project that is changing things for others? That's most of us, right? So of course, you have to think about transition management for that. It's a given. If you're not already doing that, grab a transition expert and bring them along because you got to quickly get caught up so you can transition the organization to wherever you're going, whatever your project is trying to create. But what about the transition management that is required inside a project? When we change from, we're not doing that system or that scope exactly the way we thought, we're adjusting it because this way is technically more elegant, or this way is more secure, or because the vendor can't really do what we thought they could do at the beginning or that they said in the RFP, right? Those changes, even the internal ones, create the same reaction. They create the same reaction. As we think about how we move projects at the speed of change, we got to bring them along. We have to anticipate that. We have to anticipate what is change and what is transition, who all is impacted, who are the people, who are the who and what's their appetite, and what is changing for them. Is it something they love and something they're delighted about, or is it something that really hurts them, something that's going to cause them pain or additional work? We got to think about who is, when change is happening, who is it impacting, and how do they feel about that? So stakeholder management, when I think about my perspective on stakeholder management, of course there's the PMBOK 2x2 grid, and Dan Pink reminded us this morning how much we all really love those 2x2 grids. But when we think about people, how they influence the project and how the project impacts them, we've got this little moment at the bottom that is attitude, right? How the project impacts them. Maybe I like the idea of the project, but right now it's causing me more work. Maybe I don't really like the project at all. Maybe I like the project, but I don't particularly like you. I don't know, right? There are moments our stakeholders form these opinions and have their attitude, and that attitude influences the project because it sort of comes off of them at every moment. You can see it in their action and their active engagement. You can see it in their meeting participation. You can see it, and it has the ability to influence then the rest of us. Even more so when change happens. Even more so when change happens. So as you're doing your stakeholder analysis, right, as you're figuring out who cares on your project, that's stakeholder analysis, who cares? Who cares about my project? And I don't mean it to be pithy, I mean it to be genuine. Who are all the who care about my project? We got to stop and we got to realize, how are they going to deal with change? On the core team, how does every member of my core team, this is a standard tool you're likely familiar with, the onion diagram, stakeholder identification tool. Again, all of these are available. Just let us know who you are and we'll send you all of it. But the core team, how are they going to deal with the change? The extended team, who are only involved once in a while, how do I keep them engaged when change happens? The internal stakeholders who have no action but they need to be informed. How do I communicate to them? How about the external, the government regulators, the customer, our vendor partners? When we think about change on a project, you want to move a project at the speed of change, you have to stop and think about all of the things, all of the people, and how they will respond to change, and we got to bring them along. We got to bring them along. There, in case you needed the 2x2 grid, it's there. Standard stakeholder management grid, right? You got to bring them along. So here's a model that you might not have seen before, and this is a goal that we have as change leaders. I do a lot of change management projects. Some of them have been wildly successful, and some of them have been moderately successful. And when I think about the change leadership, there's kind of this scope of people. You've got people who will adopt no matter what. The project is ready, or they're ready for change. Whatever's going on, they will adopt. And then you've got some who are tolerant if. I'll do this if you go first. I'll jump off that cliff as long as you show me it's a good idea, right? I'll do it if so-and-so says to. I'll do it begrudgingly. I'll do it if I have time. I'll do it if it's only, if it fits within these parameters. There's the tolerate if. And then there are some who are going to actively resist because it is contrary to what they want and contrary to what they need. And what our goal is as change leaders is to identify those ones and sort of work them down, push them down into the cycle. So what is it? What is it that you will resist? What is it? Over my dead body, right? You've heard people respond to change this way. This is not going to happen. Okay, well, what would it take for it to happen? Anybody see the Men in Black movies? Somewhere along the line, one of the characters says, over my dead body. And the alien guy says, your terms have been accepted. Yeah, right? Okay, if that's what it's going to take. No, I'm not talking about violence. But we figure out, okay, well, what are your terms? What would it take? And we take them through. Do you need someone to help you through this change? Do you need a little time? Do you need these things to be protected? Moving at the speed of change means bringing others along in what they need. So how do we do that? What do I do? In initiation, at the very earliest stages of your project, you need to anticipate the good and anticipate the bad. Anticipate the changes that will happen, the cliffs that we're going to be jumping off. Anticipate who's going to put on a cape and the mask, and who's going to fly and say, I got this. And then you're going to imagine the bad. You're going to imagine and anticipate where the pain points will be. What's going to be hard? What's going to be challenging? What's going to be difficult? What's going to be a roadblock? And you think through it. And then you plan for it. You plan for those approval levels on a change and who you're going to escalate through and who needs to know. Like when you start escalating things up the chain, even among our senior leaders, we have pre-grievers and we have post-grievers. They exist at all the ranks, so anticipate that and plan for that in your change management approval levels and detail out the process so even those who don't like change at least know what to expect. At least make sure you've got it documented so they know what to expect in the process. And then you help people through those changes. I'm going to take us back to this picture. Stable in A, letting go of A, and the unstable period. And I'm going to tell you a story. The story actually comes from I've been part of many changes that I wanted, changes that I was a part of, changes that I was delighted to be a part of, changes that I picked, changes that I did not pick. I have stories about various moments in this. But one of the stories that I want to share is about a chosen change. And I'm choosing this because we as project leaders, we often choose to be part of our projects, we choose to lead our projects, or we choose at least not to say no, right? So even though it might not be my idea, I'm just here to facilitate your success, I chose to say yes. And I'm here in this project, so I chose it in those cases. So this is actually a story from in Iowa. We have the annual Iowa State Fair. And the state fair is just a big adventure. It's lots of fun. I'm an avid fairgoer, which for me and my family, what that means is on the first, or one of the days of the fair, my daughters and I arrive at the fair before the gates open. Like they open the gates, we go in, we spend all day there, and we're there the entire day until they shoo us out at the end of the day and say we want to go to sleep now. And they shoo us out. And my husband stays very comfortably at home because he does not prefer the company of people like that. So he stays home, and the girls and I go. And we have this really, really wonderful trip. And as we think about where we're going at the state fair, we usually come in down the same entrance, and a couple of years back they changed things around. So the entrance that we usually come in is now what they call Thrill Zone. Thrill Zone, right? So I go to Thrill Zone, walk in the gate, and my kids are there, and they're like, or we walk in, and there's a new opportunity in Thrill Zone. There is a zip line. There is a zip line. Now this is interesting. My kids are like, Mom, let's do the zip line. And you look at the zip line, and there's this tent there, and there are people, there's music playing, there are people kind of dancing and line, and they're kind of having fun. And they're like, yeah, zip line. The zip line is super cool. And so I'm like, all right. And my kids say, Mom, let's do the zip line. All righty, let's do it. Why not? So we get up to the counter, and they tell us how much it's going to cost. Now here's the new message. Well, if it's going to cost that much, then it had darn well better be fun. Right? So it's singing and dancing, and then they tell you how much it's going to be cost, and it's going to be fun, right? So you get to the next stage, and I tell this story to think about the messages. First message, this is going to be fun. Second message, this is going to be real fun. Next message, this is where they put on your harness. Have you ever done one of these? You know, there's a harness helping person, and you kind of step into the harness, and they pull it up, and this gal is buckling my harness, and she goes like this to have me read the sign over her shoulder. And over the back of her head, or like over the back of her shoulder on the tent wall, is this sign that says, once you harness up, you don't get your money back. This is a new message, my friends. Why am I going to want my money back? What are you not telling me? Is there some moment of this that is not going to be fun? Where did the fun go? But I can still hear the dancing, and I can still hear the music, and it's all great, so I'm like, all right, let's do this. So we keep going, and I'm an optimist. It's all going to be okay at the end of the day, right? So we keep going, and then the next step is a new message, yet another message. And this is a gal named Allison. She's got a little name tag that says Allison. And Allison is standing there, and Allison says, ma'am, the next thing for you is you're going to go up these stairs. And all I want you to do when you go up those stairs, all I want you to do is just focus. Just focus on going up those stairs, one step at a time. Just go up those stairs. Don't think about anything else, and for heaven's sakes, don't look down. But don't go up. I mean, just go up those stairs. That's all you have to do, ma'am. When you get to the top, Justin's going to help you out. You just get to the top. Just go up those stairs. All righty, new message. So I start going up the stairs. I'm about 7 steps up before I discover about myself that I actually do like my feet on the ground. Did not know that about myself until this very day, but here I am discovering, and now I'm still climbing. Like Allison said, 1 foot in front of the other, just go up, just go up. Well, now the wind picks up, and this thing is like blowing. And if you've ever been to a state fair anywhere, you guys have a great state fair too, anytime, you know, all as the wind is blowing, this thing is shaking, the thought going through my head was, last week, this was in someone's pickup. I'm gonna die here. So I'm climbing, and I'm climbing, and I'm climbing, and it's now many years after this happened, and I don't actually still feel the adrenaline that I felt that day. But I'm climbing, and I finally, I just want to scream and run, but Allison said 1 step at a time. So 1 step at a time, get to the top, to this platform. Now, platform is a very big word for the very little thing that I'm standing on. So this thing is no bigger around than my arms if I go like this. So there's this platform, and Justin's up there, and I'm up there, and there's this piece of curved plexiglass. And that's really the only thing standing between me and my death, is this piece of curved plexiglass. And Justin does some stuff with my harness, and he hooks me in, and he says, ma'am, in just a moment, I'm going to move that piece of plexiglass, and you're going to jump. Oh, no, Justin. I'm afraid you have me confused with someone else. I'm not, no, And he says, ma'am, it'll be fun. No, Justin, fun has left us. There is no fun left in this moment. This is not fun anymore. He says, ma'am, you're not going to get your money back. I don't actually care about my money anymore, Justin. He says, ma'am, you can go down any way you like. Thank you. I'll take the stairs. He says, no, ma'am, you can't take the stairs. It's not safe. Wait, then why did I come up them? So Justin and I go back and forth for a bit. Probably a bit longer than we should have. And then finally, it's like he's been trained to read people like me. And he says perhaps the only message, right, this is all about messages. He says to me, the only message that's going to actually get me off this platform. It's like this man has figured me out. He looks at me, he looks down at the bottom of the zip line. He says, man, those 2 little girls down there that look a lot like you? Yeah? He says, those are your kids, right? Yeah. Ma'am, do you really want them to see you like this? And I jumped. it was awful. It was awful, 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 awful. It was the longest, most miserable 17 seconds of my life. And both of my children were very large. It was awful. This was awful, awful, awful. And we get to the bottom, and my knees are shaking, and the catch it guy catches me at the bottom, and he like puts my feet back on the ground. And the whole way I'm going, all I'm thinking is, please, new message, right? Please don't let go. Don't let go. Don't let go. Don't. I want this thing to hold, right? I just need to stay connected. That's the message going on. I just need to stay connected. And I get to the bottom, he catches me, and my knees are like jello, and I'm just super grateful that I have not just puked. And I'm just really, really horrified at this whole thing. But my feet are back on the ground. I'm like, it's going to be okay. That was awful. I'll never do anything like that again. Until the next sound. And the next sound was my 10-year-old at the time. And she looks at me, she goes, Mom, you are so cool. Worth it! Right? Absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. Hear those messages? It's a really great analogy when you think about change. When you think about transition and what we're going through. Sometimes we need different messages. I needed a message. I needed that this is going to be fun. Here's what's coming. I needed advance notice that it was going to hurt, right? You're not going to get your money back. I needed the, hey, at this moment, I need you to not be distracted. Focus on one step at a time. We needed all of these messages, and I needed someone to give me the right message to actually jump. I needed to stay connected during the disconnected period, and I needed reinforcement that it was all going to be okay at the end. So it is, my friends, with bringing people through transition. Sometimes we got to give them a message at the beginning. We got to get them out of their comfort zone. And sometimes we got to light a fire, right? You've heard the phrase burning platform? That's what we're talking about here, right? That platform's on fire. You can't stay here. Sometimes we give them a mask and say, you be in charge. Sometimes we take their hand and say, let's go together. But we give them a different message. Different messages. And then when someone is grieving in that letting go spot, when they're really grieving, they're coming down the side and it's sad and it's awful for them, I believe more than anything else what we should offer right there is a Kleenex. I believe when someone is grieving loss in the midst of a change, we should not say, knock it off, get over it. You'll be fine. We should say, hey, I bet that hurts. Here's a Kleenex. I hear you. We should be compassionate in that moment. And in the uncertain period at the bottom there, if we got a raft, we bring out a raft. If we've got one of those life preservers, you bring out a life preserver. You reach out your hand and help someone so they feel like they're on stable ground too. And then as we're climbing the other side, this is a piece that's going to challenge you just a little bit. As we're climbing the other side, the reality of just about any change is that we're all together in this. I can't think of any change that impacts just me. If I live alone and I change my diet, right? That's usually what someone will say, yeah, but if I live alone, nobody else cares what I eat, and I change my diet, that's not going to impact anybody. Well, except when you start talking about it at work on Monday. Or except when you change your buying habits and your grocer notices that they don't have to stock that anymore, right? Every change that we go through impacts others. And so as you're thinking about this climbing, see the gal's climbing on the side there. As you're climbing, we're climbing together. We're all kind of tethered together. Now imagine that we as a group right here decided that we're going to climb Mount Everest together. We're going to climb together. And so we harness ourselves together and we get our equipment and we start climbing and we start climbing and we start climbing and we get about halfway up and I go, you know what? This is just too hard. Y'all carry me. What happens? You follow that to its logical conclusion, then we all die. Right? That's a little dark, but if we follow it to its logical conclusion, a little dark, we can't carry dead weight. We can't carry, if you stopped and thought about it, how many projects are you aware of where somebody resisted the change, where somebody didn't adopt the new process, didn't adopt the new technology, didn't try the new thing, and so we are back to our old ways. We all slid down and we lost those hundreds of thousands of dollars of opportunities. We lost all that effort that got wasted. I see like nods, you've been through, you know this pain, right? We try and we try and try, and if somebody doesn't, even one person has one unchecked act of resistance, of not adopting the new change, it'll drag all of us back down, and we won't get there. So what we have to do is we have to equip people. So you see a couple things. One thing that's really important are the tents. Any climbers? You guys, it's climbing state. Of course, climbers, when I ask the question in Iowa, nobody raises their hand. Climbers here in Colorado? Right? You got climbers, okay? So I'm told, I'm not familiar with these things, but I'm told that in the climbing world, there are tents that you can pitch on as little as 6 inches of rock cliff. Is this true? Okay, seeing some nods. I, for one, would not sleep well in said tent. Okay, but there are tents that you can pitch on 6 inches of rock cliff. Why do I point that out? Because when we go through changes, sometimes we need to build tents. We need to protect ourselves. We need to protect our teams. We need to shelter us from the storm a little bit. And so as you're going up that other side and you've got your change picture, you can think of adding tents on some of those craggy cliffs right there. Maybe it's not a good night's sleep, but maybe it's at least a chance to get in out of the storm. Maybe it's a little bit of rest. And the other thing that we need to have equipped people for that, we need to equip people with scissors and helicopters. I am not saying that we should cut people free when they slack off. I'm really not. I'm actually an advocate for saving people whenever possible. But I do believe that if we go into a change and before we have jumped off that first transition, that we look each other in the eye and we say every one of us is equipped with our very own pair of scissors. And when you realize that B is not for you, that that's not where you're going, when you realize that, cut yourself free so that the rest of us don't die. If we empower this, oh, and by the way, here's a helicopter with a ladder. You can climb that ladder and you can go be moved to another place. We'll help you find your joy and your success somewhere else. There's no shame in leaving this. But rather than bringing the rest of us down, be empowered in advance with scissors that you can use. Now, I was teaching this for the IIBA, International Institute of Business Analysis, a couple years ago. And I was back at the Central Iowa chapter, and I had actually this picture up on the screen. And one of the gals was, it was after the session, and one of the gals came back in, and she says, I just have to tell you that you gave us a gift that no one has ever given us. She said, on our team, we were switching, we were in a transition, right? We were going agile, and so we had this traditional waterfall team, and we were trying to go agile, and we had an individual on the team who was just miserable. She just hated it, and she was bringing everybody else down. Agile just didn't work for her. She preferred a traditional waterfall approach, and she wasn't making the transition, and she was making us all miserable. And the gal said to me, Sinikka, last year when you presented this idea on change and told us that we could pre-equip ourselves with scissors, and that we could have no shame in moving to your own success somewhere else. It's not, I'm not stabbing you, I'm not cutting you free. I'm allowing you to self-empower and find your success somewhere else. She said, you told us that, and we tried it. And let me tell you what happened. She said she moved back to a waterfall team, and they love her, and she loves them, and she is thriving, and they are thriving, and we are thriving. And our organization is so much healthier because we allowed someone to not have to get to be. Think about that in your projects. Think about equipping people with scissors if they need them. And then safety on the escape route. And the very last step as you get to the last part, that stable in B when we arrive there, is we got to celebrate. And that sounds ridiculous. It sounds dumb. But how many of us have finished a project and then have even forgotten to say, woohoo? Like we didn't even give ourselves a heartbeat for that. We just moved on to the next thing because we're doers, we're goers, get going, get going, get going. If we stop and we celebrate, there is a better chance that the people who are along the project with us, there is a better chance that they will come along on the next change or the next transition with us. If we stop and we say, hey, I know that was hard for you, but you did it. So a couple things we got to know. 3 keys to successful changes. First one is planning. So say it with me, planning. You got to plan. You know this, we're planners, right? We're project managers, we're planners by DNA. It's wonderful. We got to plan, buy-in, and communication. Say all 3 of them with me. Planning, buy-in, communication. These are absolutely critical. So the first one, the value of planning. The value of planning. The most common complaint in a change, transition after transition, I'll tell you, the most common complaint is you didn't prepare me for this. You didn't prepare me for this change. Rarely do we say, I did not take the initiative to properly prepare myself for this change, right? We say, you didn't prepare me for this change. And so you need to be prepared that that's what they're going to say. And so instead of that, you draw some disembodied heads and some stick figures and a journey of change, and you say, this is what it's going to feel like. You draw out your change control processes and say, this is what it's going to feel like. Right? You prepare people for change. A number of years ago, I was in a transition that was not fun. It was not my choice. I was involved in a very large, very significant corporate layoff. And we referred to that in the organization as Black Friday. And in Black Friday, what had happened was, if we had looked at the history of that particular CEO in that particular organization, we would have found that in his entire career as CEO in any organization, he always had fourth quarter layoffs so he could make his numbers at the end of the year. It was kind of an unfortunate way to treat people, and eventually they caught on to his pattern. But we didn't know that yet. We weren't watching, and I was just, an account manager at the time, didn't really know much of anything. And there I was in corporate America as an account manager. It was a Friday morning, 8 o'clock Friday morning. There were 8 of us who supported a particular account team. So our account was we were a product and fulfillment kind of client, provider, and this was a $20 million a month client, so decent sized client. And we had an account team of 8 at 8 in the morning. By 2 in the afternoon, 6 of my colleagues and closest friends had been laid off, and there were only 2 of us left standing. The instruction to us was this was to be transparent to the customer. I'll show you transparent. Anyway, so transparent to the customer is what we were told. And the value of planning, I wasn't prepared for this. I was so ill prepared for this. When we shared stories throughout the organization, one of my colleagues wound up with a little more advance notice because she had a good friend who worked in shipping and receiving. And he had given her the heads up that on the Thursday before this, the receiving dock had received several pallets of empty cardboard boxes. So this is an indicator, right? You watch the signs. So in this particular case, this was just devastating. 600 people in the Des Moines area, 600 people lost their jobs that day. And that's really, really substantial. It was really, really painful. And I was really cheated and really disheartened. And I had the survivor's guilt that one might have when one still has one's job and your best friends don't. And I went home that night and I drafted up my resignation letter and printed it out and signed it and carried it back to work with me the next day. And we had badges that were on lanyards that would the retractable lanyards, and we would have those because you're supposed to badge in and swipe to get all the doors open and stuff. And I didn't even clip it to my belt. I just walked around with it, holding it in my hand, because what I wanted is I wanted someone to be that person who ticked me off that last time, and I could slam my desk. Here's my badge. Here's my resignation letter. I'm out. I'm done. Right? That's what I wanted. I was so grief-stricken and so angry and so frustrated about this, because there was no advance notice. There was no clue that this was coming, no plan for how we were going to get through this. I had taken every single personal item of mine off my desk and brought it home, and the only thing for all of those weeks and months that followed, the only thing I did was every single day I reprinted my resignation letter with a new date on it and brought it back every day. Every day I brought that back. 6 months into this transition, someone, my colleague Heather, the other gal who was left standing, Heather said something to me like, Sinikka, I got up to come to work today, and I got up to come to work today, and it didn't suck. And that was the nicest thing we'd said. Fun. Right? We were in the gray at that point, and it was really, really awful. And the day in and the day out was pretty gross. And then somewhere in that 6 months, one of the senior leaders in the organization came to my desk. And I will never get his words right. It's been years. But I will never get his words right, but I will get his message right. Because what he said to me that day, he said, Sinikka, we haven't done right by you. We should have connected with you more. We should have communicated more. We should have told you what was going on. And you need to know that you matter. You're still here because you're a rising star in the organization, and we want a future for you, and here's where we're going. And I know you can't really see it or feel it right now, but he said we should have done right by you. And that was the closest I would ever get to an apology, but it was something, right? So he was connecting with me as a person. He said, here's where we're going. He's helping me see the end game again. He says, it's going to get better from here. I just need you to stick with it. And that day, I went home and I did not reprint my resignation letter. I did not redate it. I did not bring it back in. I did, on the other hand, bring back a very small picture of me and my husband that I put on my desk. And that was the only personal item I ever did bring back to that job. But it was forward movement, right? It was that planning. If he had planned better for that, we would have been okay. But what he did, at least at that moment, was he communicated with me. In that valley, he made me feel connected. Second one is the importance of buy-in. The importance of buy-in. As we think about where we're going, the importance of buy-in is so critical. How many of us have heard us talking for weeks and weeks and weeks, months and months, years now about the bus, right? Get on the bus, best seats on the bus, Jim Collins, Good to Great, the seats on the bus, all those things. So we hear people using the phrase, well, get on the bus, just get on the bus, it'll be good, just get on the bus. Well, getting on the bus is indeed a sign of buy-in. But how about if we go one further and don't stink up the place? There is a reality that I use when we're talking about change management when I say, you know what, we've all got to get through this together. And if we're going to buy into this change, I need you to not be miserable. I need you to not spew grossness, right? Let's be productive, let's move forward. And so we get buy-in in that way. And ways that you can do that are with group norms. How many of you are using group norms on your team projects today? Group norms, like, okay, a few. So what's a norm? Norms are the verbal or sometimes written on a poster contract that we have that we agree as a group is normal for us. These are how we agree to behave so that we'll get along right. So some people call them ground rules, but I don't really like the word rules because there are people who are rule breakers. And it's just, they're norms, they're our agreement. And when we use our norms, and in our norms we say something like, we're allowed to grieve change, but for only this much time. Or in our norm we say, this is a safe space to vent, but that where other people can hear us is not. Or in our norm we say, when I get through a change, I promise to reach my hand back and help you. Right? What if we establish norms that way? And then the last one is the need for communication. Planning, buy-in, and communication. The need for communication. If you're going to err on the side of over-communicating. One of my most successful and favorite projects in the change space was a human resources project. It was a financial services company, and we were changing the way we were delivering services to the rest of the company. So the company had been around for 125 years, and for 125 years, human resources had existed to serve employees and leaders. Serve leaders and employees. So human resources was there as customer service, 125 years of customer service. This was in the 2008-ish time period, at 6, 7, 8, right? We're seeing the writing on the wall. Customer service is expensive. We've got to move to a click, call, connect kind of model. Operational efficiency, we got to change the model. So they changed the service delivery model. It changed the jobs of 232 people. We took 232 people, kind of threw their jobs up in the air, and it created a whole bunch of new stuff. We had new processes, new skills, job training. We had this click, self-serve kind of tools, a whole bunch of stuff that was wildly different. When we were planning this project, a handful, as a case study, and the best of the best, the senior leaders of the organization had said, we're going to put 7 people in charge of this project because the perfect size team, 7 plus or minus 2, right? You know this. Perfect size team, 7 or plus or minus 2. He says, we get 7 of us. 7 of you are in charge of this. Project manager, full-time. Communications specialist, full-time. The other 5 of you who are leading this, half of your responsibilities have You've lost half of your responsibilities. We've assigned them to someone else temporarily so you can focus on this, right? This is best of the best. This is some planning and this is some communication. And they said, do it by the book. Use John Cotter's model. Use the best experts. Use what we can to do this one by the book. And we did, and communication was so essential on this one. The only person who logged more hours, I was the project manager, only person who logged more hours to the project than I did was the gal whose job was 100% change communication. That was the whole thing she was doing, change communication. She beat me by 8 hours. So we had this communication. And as we communicated, and as we communicated, and as we communicated, somewhere we got a reputation of being the most talked about, least acted on initiative in the history of the company. Okay. Because we talked about it, we talked about it, we talked about it. We talked about our new mantra, globally efficient, right? Globally consistent yet flexible, operational efficiency. We talked about it until the people we were talking to looked back at us and said something like, we get it already, operationally efficient, globally flexible, or globally consistent yet flexible. They used our words back to us. They're not using your words back to you. You haven't said it enough, right? Over communicate. Here's how I know we were successful. At the end of the project, having completed the project on time, under budget by $500 and change. Under budget by $500, on time, on scope, with all of the goals that we had intended to meet. We accomplished this project and had a big hoopla with the senior leadership of the rest of the organization. And one of those senior leaders came up to me, and I will never forget his words. He said, "You didn't even make a splash." That organization, that project could have been so disruptive to the rest of us, it could have brought us to a standstill. And you didn't even make a splash. What a moment of triumph. What a moment, because we over communicated. If you're going to err on the side of over communicating. So for many minutes, we've got just a couple minutes to wrap up, and for many minutes I have been talking at you, and I'm super sorry for that. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to turn to your neighbor, and I want you to pick at least one thing that you're going to apply, something that we've talked about that you're going to apply as you go back to your day jobs on this project stuff. We got about 4 minutes to wrap up. You guys take 1 minute to talk, and I'll bring us back together. You have a really, really, yeah. Uh-huh. We had an excellent circumstance on that one. And I'll bring us back together. Go ahead and about 20 seconds to wrap that up.
There's a Chinese curse that goes, may you live in interesting times.
For sure. Thank you. Anybody willing to share something they're willing to do, something they're going to do, something they're going to apply? Okay. We got someone who has confessed that he's going to plan for change. I got a couple of these prizes. There's one for you. Thank you, sir. Who else? Something you're going to do. Go ahead. Communicate, communicate, communicate. Thank you much. And one more. Oh, I see you over there. Yours was the first hand I saw in the gray. Become aware of your pre-grievers and your post-grievers. Thank you, thank you. All right, as we wrap up here, we got about a minute left of my time, and then I got to hand the mic back off. Here were our objectives. I wanted you to be able to reflect on this. I wanted to tell you some stories, entertain you maybe with some stories for the afternoon, get you moving around, get some tactics to recognize change, to feel it, to experience, and experience some effective change leadership tips: communication, planning, and buy-in. What else can I do for you? Any last-minute questions? Before we wrap up entirely, there are still sign-in sheets on the rows. They were in the row. Use them, sign them in. I don't share or sell, but I will send you a newsletter on Fridays of good tips. If you scan the QR code, I'll send you the follow-up from this. You can also take my business card and communicate that way. Follow us on social media or Twitter or any of those. We're out there, and I thank you. It has been a joy. Thank you so much.
Test, test. Give y'all gratitude and thank you very much for this wonderful presentation. We all be changed coming out of here. Thank you very much. Don't forget about the survey, please, and also you can get your PDU codes on the event guide, the digital event guide on your phone. Thank you very much.